Have you ever driven down a new highway, late at night, and felt like you were the only person for miles? A road that cuts through an ancient, sleeping landscape. What if that landscape isn't sleeping at all? What if it's waiting? Tonight's story is about a river that never forgets, and a road that leads to nowhere you want to go. It all begins with a forgotten village, nestled by the edge of a wide, silent river. An old man named Elias lived there, in a crumbling wooden house, right by the water. He was a man hollowed out by grief. The villagers said he'd once been the local ferryman, a happy man with a wife and son. But one stormy night, the river, in its fury, flipped his boat, pulling his family into its cold, black depths. After that terrible night, Elias never left the riverside. He became a ghost long before he died, claiming he could still hear their voices calling to him when the moon hung high and full in the sky. He would just sit there, staring into the water, a sentinel of sorrow. As the years crawled by, something changed. The river seemed to grow darker, more menacing. Animals that once drank from its banks steered clear. The birds fell silent near its shore. And on the darkest nights, villagers would whisper about strange lights, eerie lanterns floating upstream, moving against the powerful current as if guided by an unseen hand. They were whispers, at first, tales of frightened children. But then, the whispers turned cold with truth. The old man Elias was found dead in his home. His eyes were wide open, staring at a horror only he could see, and his mouth was filled with river mud. The house was left to rot, a skeletal warning by the water's edge. Fast forward a few decades, a new highway was built, a sterile ribbon of asphalt cutting across the old land, right over that same haunted river. It was a shortcut, rarely used, especially at night. A young man named Daniel was driving home along this new road. A thick, unnatural fog rolled in from the river, swallowing the world in a blanket of gray. Daniel didn't know the local legends, the whispers that still haunted the nearby towns. To him, it was just a road. As his car reached the crest of the bridge spanning the river, the engine suddenly sputtered and died. The radio hissed with static, the headlights flickered erratically, and then complete, unnerving silence. The only sound left was the slow, heavy breathing of the river below. It didn't sound like water. It sounded like a giant, sleeping creature. Daniel got out of his car, his breath misting in the cold air. He figured the fog was just unusually dense. Maybe some water on the road had stalled the engine. He pulled out his phone, the flashlight beam cutting a weak path through the gloom. That's when he saw them, wet footprints, leading away from his car and into the trees. But it hadn't rained for days. Puzzled, but thinking maybe someone else had crashed, he decided to follow them. He needed help. After all, the prints led him away from the modern highway and down a muddy path toward the river Bend. There, half hidden by ancient trees, stood a small wooden cabin. It looked ancient, on the verge of collapse, yet a faint, sickly yellow light glowed from its windows. It was the house of the old ferryman, Elias. But Daniel didn't know that. He just saw a chance for help. He knocked once on the weathered door. It creaked open on its own, revealing a room that smelled of damp soil, wood smoke, and something else. Something like decay. An old man sat hunched by a crackling fire, stirring a pot of dark, bubbling liquid. He looked up, and Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The man's eyes were pale, like river stones, and his skin was as gray and weathered as driftwood. "You shouldn't be here," the man rasped, his voice like gravel. "The river doesn't like visitors at night." Daniel started to explain about his car, his words stumbling out, but his voice caught in his throat. So, Tim. Wet, muddy handprints were crawling up the wall behind the old man, as if invisible. Drenched figures were climbing toward the ceiling. They were fresh. The old man's whisper was barely audible over the fire. "They come when someone new crosses the water." A cold dread seized Daniel. Before he could even think to run, the floorboards behind him groaned heavily, as if under an immense weight. The sound of the river suddenly grew louder, closer, no longer a distant murmur, but a heavy, wet breathing right outside the door. Panic took over. Daniel spun around and ran, bursting out of the cabin and stumbling towards the riverbank, desperate to get back to the road, back to his car, back to the sane world. Just as he reached the edge of the water, a brilliant flash of lightning split the sky, illuminating the scene in a stark, horrifying freeze frame. And for one terrifying moment, Daniel saw exactly what the old man had meant. Standing in the murky water were dozens of pale, spectral figures. Their faces were distorted, half missing, their mouths open in silent, eternal screams. Their eyes were empty sockets, staring into nothing. And among them, in the foreground, was a woman with long, dark hair, her form shimmering in the stormlight. She was holding a little boy's hand, and both of them, the woman and the child, were looking straight at him. He stumbled backward, tripping over a root, his heart hammering against his ribs. He scrambled to his feet and glanced back at the cabin. It was empty. The old man was gone. There was only a rocking chair, still moving gently by the firelight, as if someone had just gotten up. The next morning, Daniel's car was found abandoned on the bridge. The doors were wide open, the headlights still on, their batteries drained. But of Daniel, there was no trace. The police searched for days, their official report concluding that he must have slipped and fallen into the river. Another tragic accident, but the locals knew better. They knew the river had claimed another soul. Now, they say that when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, and lightning flashes across the sky, travelers on that lonely highway sometimes see a figure standing by the water. He holds a lantern high, waving frantically, as if warning them to turn back, to not cross the bridge. Some say it's the ghosts of Elias, forever bound to his grief. But others whisper that it's Daniel, still trying and failing to escape the river's haunting call. So, the next time you find yourself on a deserted road at night, with a river flowing silently beside you, maybe it's best to keep driving. Don't stop. Don't stop, because you never know who or what might be waiting for you in the water. Thanks for listening to our story tonight. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more tales that lurk in the shadows. Stay safe out there.